Today's episode is one for reflection, the good, the bad, because it is about my third ampuversary. Some dates hit differently, but for me, I am terrible at remembering birthdays, but certain anniversaries kind of stick in my mind, stick in my body, you know, that kind of way where you can feel the tension and the jittery mental space and the heaviness that sneaks in. And sometimes I don't even kind of click on the anniversary or whatever it is until it's later that day and I've already kind of been through the emotions. Today is kind of one of those days for me. This week I had my third ampuversary. Some quick context for anyone who is new here. 6 years ago, I was in a car accident due to black ice. That is an anniversary I make an attempt to mark too, but it falls on Simba's birthday, which I always end up feeling like an awful cat mum for. Fast forward, months in a Lazaroff frame. The first one I had for 7 months. This was then removed. I got a serious bone infection and there was the looming idea of amputation. However, at that moment for me, amputation felt like giving up. Like, looking back, the pressure wasn't just from me, it was people around me that were suggesting it, and I opted with my surgeon and said, okay, we'll try the frame again. I don't know how I'm going to get through it because my mental health already felt like it was going to be destroyed. It got to the start of the second year where I basically said, look, I was already struggling and you keep telling me 3 months and it is really just eating away at me, so when do I know what's going to happen? When do we say this hasn't worked? And he told me that was always down to me, so I started to do the research. I started to reach out to limb services, ask what amputation could look like, and I went through this process for probably about 8 months. So I went to the pre-amputation appointment. There's an episode on that if you want to hear the kind of things I was asked and the information that I was given. But I went to this appointment. A few weeks later, I had a clinic appointment and my surgeon said to me, it's been 2 years, either we try it and it's worked or we try it and it hasn't. And unfortunately, in the process of removing my frame, my leg snapped in front of me and I was just in so much shock, and I just said, I'm done. If it's broken, amputate it. And I was at that moment done. Like, living with the frame on was miserable. I voiced how much I was struggling constantly, and the toll that it had on me was unimaginable. Like, I didn't know that pain, heartache, grief, all of the things that I went through with the frame, I didn't imagine that was ever possible. And amputation was terrifying, like it was, but ultimately it ended up giving me my life back. Hi friends, welcome back to another episode of the podcast. Everyone experiences anniversaries differently, and I have had a lot of time to process mine. When I was in the hospital coming up to amputation, staff had once said to me or called me the poster child for dealing with amputation. And as much as that was flattering, I still had my own battles, and I guess this is about having the room for the lows and the highs that come throughout this journey. If you have been through recovery due to an accident, became disabled, or an amputee, I would love to hear what kind of anniversaries are important to you on your journey, and you can let me know down below in the comments, or if alternatively you don't want to do that, you can send me an email to crippleChroniclespod@gmail.com. I'm going to kind of get into the sections of this episode. If you would like to not miss another upload from me, you can subscribe and click that notification bell. Currently, I am on a two weekly upload schedule. I have an episode coming out about the ethics of euthanasia. I'm still to record it. I'm still to finish even fucking bringing it all together. If you want to see more of me, hit subscribe, turn that notification bell on. You can also find me on socials at Cripple Chronicles Pod if you want to see what I am up to outside of the podcast. But yeah, grab some snacks and let's get into today's episode. Sometimes when planning episodes, I will go through and write down questions to myself, and then the answers to the questions I'll kind of build off of that for an episode, and that's what we've got today. Wow, those my eyes open there were crazy. But yeah, that's what I've done today. So all the chapters are going to be down below. You can skip about if you want to, or stay for all the yapping. But I'm going to get into first what I kind of remember most from my amputation day, which was the 28th of August 2022. The days leading up to surgery were an emotional roller coaster. Like, my legs snapped, they told me I needed a CT scan. I sat in that room for 5 days waiting for that CT scan, asking every single day, getting upset every time they delayed it or made excuses, getting taken down for an x-ray to then be told that, well, we're not going to expose you to radiation when it's not necessary, so sent back upstairs. And then I think after that, one of the nursing assistants had came in and asked me if I wanted to go home because this was a Saturday and I wasn't going to get the scan until the Monday. At this point, I didn't know if my leg was broken. I had been admitted to hospital, 3 or 4 days prior. I had stopped my carers coming in, and this was maybe 5-6 o'clock on a Saturday evening. So you're expecting to discharge me home, to get my carers to come back in for the evening I get home and for the next day, not knowing how much weight I can even put through my leg because we don't know if it's broken. And this was so wild to me. I ended up finding out it was actually one of the surgeons that worked under my surgeon that had recommended this, and he was like, well, I didn't know if you thought it would be more comfortable. Nothing would have been more comfortable than having a scan and actually knowing if my leg was broken, because that was part of the emotional roller coaster, not understanding if it was broken, if it wasn't, still having this frame, am I going to need to get my leg amputated? And then my surgeon had to be upfront because with the second frame, I grew 3 new pieces of bone. I had a bone graft put in at my knee where my leg had broken, so realistically that should have been the stronger part of my leg in my mind, because that is the part that had the bone graft and I had grown bone up the top of my leg. That is why I was told by my surgeon that they didn't know how much of my leg they were going to have to amputate, if I would be eligible to be able to wear a prosthetic. I could have been potentially a full-time wheelchair user. Pre-op, I knew from my pre-amputation appointment that the odds of me walking again as above knee amputee was a 1 in 4 chance. However, all of the things that had led up to this point, it was a miracle that I was still going. So I felt like, yeah, why can't I have that 25% chance for me to be able to make this work? However, even with that mindset, it was still fucking terrifying. The night before, I found myself reciting the Serenity Prayer over and over and over again, at least 5 times, probably more, trying to mentally prepare myself for the unknown and unloading all of this weight that I had been carrying for the first 2.5 years of a very intense journey to try and save my leg. And when it came to the morning of the surgery, it was very early. I'm pretty sure I was woken up about 5 a.m. Night shift usually does surgery prep, getting you washed, clean, all of that stuff. And I was absolutely shitting myself, and I just had this looming feeling of dread. I kept telling myself, repeating to myself that I was going for a long sleep and I would wake up and hopefully things would be better, because this was surgery number 10 for me at this point in a short space of time. So I had almost found a way to cope with all of the emotions that come up going for surgery. There was a few times sitting in post-op, you sit post-op before you go in. So I was sitting and they were doing all the paperwork, and there was multiple times where I was crying or feeling sick. I never actually was sick, but it's so daunting to know that you're basically putting your life into the hands of medical professionals and you just need to hope that it works out. And that is terrifying. Any surgery you're going for, whether it's fixing a bone or amputating one, I had hope. It was in there. It always has been in there. But even with this, it gave that idea of I'm going to go to sleep and I'll wake up and it'll be better. It did help to give me just a small sense of grounding. What about early recovery? What were the hardest bits and what were the surprises? Another burp. I think getting home from the hospital turned out to be more complicated than I expected. I asked somebody from my support network to pick me up, and they basically made excuses to delay leaving me feeling really frustrated and quite vulnerable. I hated being in hospital. It really fucked with my mental health. I wanted to be back at home with Simba, so thankfully one of my close friends stepped in, and when I was in the car they had mentioned to me how much of a relief it was just to not see me in constant pain anymore. And it hit me that I hadn't been hiding my struggle as well as I thought that I had. Recovery after getting my leg amputated really kind of felt like it felt like I was on 2 times speed considering what life was like with the frame. Suddenly I got my prosthetic at physio, moving quickly from 2 crutches to walking sticks to 1 walking stick to finally being able to take unassisted bars like I'm a rapper or something, unassisted steps in the parallel bars, which was and is still huge for me, because even at this point I don't know if I'll be able to walk unaided, but being able to do that within the parallel bars and not really holding on, again, it gives me hope there that that's possible. And although the pain started to kind of build up and I started to face the socket challenges, the pace that I was moving at in the beginning was really surreal after the really slow, monotonous, grinding years with having the frame on. Every tiny movement and milestone just felt like it was such a bigger achievement to me. Every single step felt like a victory that I hadn't fully anticipated that it would be possible. And even now, the more distance that I walk, the things that I'm able to do, I feel those wins so strongly because of everything that I experienced with the frame. What were the first year milestones, and when did things kind of start to shift? Getting back in a car and driving for me was absolutely massive. Going to the assessment centre and seeing what kind of options there were for adapted cars, actually getting in a car and realising that when I sat in that driver's seat I was not overrun with triggers, flashbacks, traumatic memories, because that was one of my biggest fears. Being a passenger, I'd felt quite sick and overwhelmed and triggered with the PTSD of my accident, that getting back in that driver's seat I was really, really worried that something might come up. And even when it got to booking lessons and the driving instructor first coming out to my house, I didn't know how much information he had, so he kind of asked me to get in the driver's seat, and me being me, straight off I went, well, I really hope you're not wanting me to go down and drive there on that dual carriageway, because the last time I was in a car I totaled it. And he was like, okay, let's just sit down and have a chat, like we're just gonna go around the neighbourhood, like do some basic things. And the more that I did that, the more that I was building back my confidence, and I managed to get my card just after the first ampuversary. Prosthetic wise, I got assessed and was qualified for a free moving knee, which felt like a really kind of tangible win, which really kind of fell flat after my fitting issues. Like, I'm still at a point where I'm working on that. However, it was something that was built up to be like a really big goal, and then realising like I just need to work with the prosthetic that I've got to be able to do things where like a free moving knee would make it easier, but it doesn't necessarily mean that I wouldn't be able to do it with a straight moving knee. But I also started kind of exploring my mobility at home and outdoors, kind of getting reacquainted with what it felt like to be independent in small ways, going to the beach, going to the park, going out for a walk, going to the shops. Like, every small task felt like reclaiming my life a bit that had been paused for so long. Kind of getting onto the bus for the first time with somebody with me, being an amputee, amazing. Getting on that bus again myself as an amputee for the first time felt like I was riding the bus for the first time in my fucking life. Like, that's what I mean when I say these wins felt so amplified, and they still do, because it's a new way experiencing things, and my life was on pause for such a period of time that when I'm able to actually do things, I feel like I have much more of an appreciation for it than maybe I would have had if I didn't have that time with the frame on. So in the first year I really started, I need to take a drink, my voice is So in that first year, I really started getting out in my wheelchair, going on public transport, hitting the gym, being at physio, reducing carer visits. That independence really mattered to me. I was trying to learn how to manage my pain, pace myself, noticing the tiny improvements that all added up month by month, and reflecting and seeing how much of the groundwork that I'd laid for myself, weight bearing with a frame, the going to physio, pushing myself, even when it felt like I was being set back, it built a really strong base for my recovery. And looking back, the first year does really feel like to me that it was filled with a lot of small victories that really added up to give me the confidence to know that I could move forward even on the days that felt really fucking difficult. Second year patterns, how was I feeling kind of from August 23 to August 24? Year 2 was a bit of a mix. Like I'd said, kind of round about that time, the fitting issues were persistent and it kind of felt like my progress came in chunks. So the things that I've written down, kind of highlights, are rediscovering joy in driving and the confidence building with that. Like me being able to get in the car and drive down to Leeds, that is something that is so massive to me. And there are a lot of people out there that haven't been in car accidents that don't really like to drive that amount just because they don't really enjoy it as much, whereas I do. So that's something that was massive to me. Starting therapy and kind of tackling my childhood trauma, shame, and very shame-fueled internal dialogue that was filled with very negative self-beliefs. And this was an intense process, but one that was really, really necessary for me. And starting being a mentor, expanding, advocating for myself, but also other people, and also kind of working on my communication skills in a different area. There were things that came into play in year 2 that were pretty complicated and often very painful. My support network at the time was pretty inconsistent, and reaching out for help ended up bringing more stress than relief. There was a lot of times where I tried to communicate and it went unanswered, or there was arguments flaring up over misunderstandings, and major occasions became painful reminders of the amount of emotional distance and strain that was there because of very fractured relationship. It revealed a lot of cracks and tension, and it highlighted the limits of support and the emotional cost of seeking connection from people who weren't able to really meet me where I was at. This combined with a heavy reliance on my wheelchair and kind of shrinking of my support circle, which made it stronger but was difficult at the time, made the kind of next months after that kind of really challenging. I requested my energy efficient wheelchair. I experimented with medical cannabis for relief, and it was really helpful. However, financially, I just could not afford to do that on a month-to-month basis at the time. Pardon me. And I also went through supporting one of my closest friends with a pretty terrifying NHS experience where we weren't sure what was going to happen, and it kind of felt like they didn't give a fuck if she lived or died. And that was heartbreaking to kind of see that happening and also feel pretty powerless over just being there and showing up, which the way I've said that, it kind of sounds small. I know that's not a small thing for me to show up and be there and offer support, but it was a situation where I wanted to be able to do more and I couldn't. So with all of these things kind of together, that really was a test of endurance for me over the second year. I feel like emotionally, physically, mentally, navigating all of these difficult things that were kind of coexisting at the same time gradually kind of strengthened my resilience and coping strategies, the ability to kind of trust my own judgment even if there was people around me that weren't able to provide consistent support. That is something that I think I struggled with because of those things going on. I was almost feeling like when I was reaching out and asking for support, I was being told that my needs were too much. And going through therapy, that was something that I was actively working on. That one of my limiting negative self-beliefs was that I am too much for people and my needs and relationships don't matter because I was just a massive people pleaser as long as other people were happy. In turn, I was happy, but I wasn't. I was fucking miserable. So realising that there was relationships that preferred that version of me made me kind of realise that maybe it just wasn't meant to work out, and that's not something easy to say. That's something that over the past kind of year and a half I have had to put a lot of kind of thought and processing and energy into, because it's hard. Like, I want support, I want people around me, I want to have like healthy, nourishing relationships. But unfortunately, if the other person doesn't want that, it's not really possible. I hope I'm not just kind of like talking in code. I felt like the way that I worded that was a bit vague, but at the same time it is something that requires a whole episode on that one thing probably. And I guess there is a bit more context with where I am now, kind of in year 3 perspective. This year, what milestones were included was being able to walk a kilometre, which was the longest distance since the accident, and also managing to roll 6.5 kilometres in my wheelchair, which figuratively and literally is like pushing myself further than I kind of thought possible. I really opened my eyes with finances, stopped burying my head in the sand, and started tackling debts, because this was something that was a major source of anxiety for me. I was sorting out my bills, focusing more deeply on my mobility and the accessibility of my home, especially from 2024 being a full-time wheelchair user. I was starting to realise that maybe things could be set up better in my house to help me to navigate around the house better, basically. And I think I kind of learned from year 2 and year 3 combined that asking questions is always better than overthinking something, and that has felt like it's been really liberating, and also able to look at things and give myself credit and a kind of pat on the back for all of the small steps that I make along the way to creating like a really beautiful life for myself. Following on from year 2 and what I kind of mentioned about my support circle, relationships kind of shifted in both subtle and significant ways. I felt a lot less guilt when setting boundaries, being more confident and comfortable in being authentic and not people pleasing, because masking is absolutely exhausting, and I would rather that the people that want to be in my life respect me for a real version of me rather than a curated version to please them, because that doesn't make me happy at the end of it. I had hoped to kind of repair some relationships in my family, however that remained very complicated and nuanced, and there was a lot of moments filled with frustration and disappointment, because I had to kind of accept the reality that there was moments of frustration and disappointment, but there was also a weight that was lifted that I didn't even really fully realise I was carrying. My mindset has really evolved from being fueled by self-hate and shame to one grounded in compassion and empathy that I extend to others, because I deserve that for myself too. At 27, I'm finally feel like I'm laying down a solid foundation for my life, and it's one that I fully own. Embracing the freedom that comes from knowing what my limits and my capabilities are. Being able to have recognition from my family would be nice, but I am really content and proud of the things that I've managed to do by myself. I really like being able to celebrate both the achievement and effort, because understanding that effort is meaningful, I'm okay as being seen as the villain in other people's story, because I hold absolutely zero guilt or remorse because I've acted for myself in a way with integrity. Damn, I really wrote a lot of notes for this episode. So I'm already half an hour in. I'm only at section 2. Let's see how long this episode is going to be. Before amputation, I had just recently moved. I had OTs from the council in and helping kind of set up the house for me to be able to exist with the frame on. And although I didn't know what to expect from amputation, I did feel lighter almost immediately. Like the frame had not only been so heavy emotionally, but heavy physically. I really did have a sense of relief when I woke up and felt that lightness, really not having to kind of lug around this way. And the friend that picked me up kind of saying not seeing me in pain, like with that frame on. Every movement that I did caused me pain. And coming home, adjusting to life without the bulk of that, it was still hard, but it felt like caring for myself became easier in smaller ways. I had a friend stay with me for a few days when I got home, which was really nice, of not just having that feeling that I'm alone and have to adapt alone. But even with that, I slowly started to reclaiming that bit of independence. I really threw myself into using my prosthetic, and I've always been very clear my wheelchair is for when I'm at home so that I'm able to then do more outside with my prosthetic. I'm somebody that likes to go out. I like to be in nature. I like to set myself little tasks, because putting my leg on to walk about the flat just does not stimulate me in a way to want to put it on. But I think it's kind of highlighted something for me that I wish people maybe understood more. Disability isn't just about mobility, it is about the constant effort of managing appointments, self-care, advocacy, the NHS weight game. It's figuring out where I fit in the world as an amputee whilst resisting the assumption that because I'm resourceful and I will find a way to cope, that I can just be left to it, because that mindset burns me out and it does actually put my health at risk. By year 3, my routines have become a lot more a lot more deliberate. I started planning prosthetic days, wheelchair days, mixed days, depending on my pain, how my skin was doing, energy. On prosthetic days, I kind of give myself time to warm up. I do a little dance to get me all motivated and ready, and then I find somewhere to go that has benches or a stopping point, or like all of the planning that goes into things to be able to be mobile is a task in itself. I really have to plan when I'm doing things, checking in with how my body is feeling, and that can look different for wheelchair days, prosthetic days, mixed days. Like, I need to plan my days and my weeks of when I'm not in a cycle of getting everything done in the morning and burning myself out by night, or getting everything done in the first half of the week and then by the end of the week hardly being able to get my body out of bed because I'm just so fucking exhausted. It's like all of these things take a lot more kind of life admin than what people maybe realise. Before I head out, I'll do a quick scan of parking, curbs, likely kind of choke points, so places that say they're accessible but you turn up and there's a surprise set of stairs, parking somewhere and there's not any dropped curbs to get onto the pavement, even looking on Google Maps, if I'm going to a shop, can I actually get into that shop, or is there 2 steps outside of it even though it's listed online as being accessible? Because that's not accessible, and when it takes so much energy to go out and do things without that planning, usually maybe times when I'm being more spontaneous, it can really upset me when somewhere is listed as being accessible and it's taking effort and energy to get there, and then you get there and it's not actually accessible. The doors aren't wide enough, there's not a disabled toilet. Like, all of these things add up, and I think that's why it can be exhausting as well, because it's not just a physical toll but a mental toll, trying to budget my energy, kind of treating it like money, spoon theory. If I spend big on mobility appointments, wearing my leg, going out for a walk, walking a kilometre, going a longer roll in my chair, something else then needs to be cheaper. So socialising, chores, life admin, and kind of realising that balance and trade-off isn't a failure, but it's a way to stay functional. Like, the goal is not to do everything, it's just to do the right things without crashing and burning myself out, which is really difficult, especially at times when there is a lot of things going on and I feel like my brain is very go, go, go. That's when I end up in cycles of getting everything done pretty early on in the day and crashing out, or doing things for Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and overdoing it all 3 days, and then Thursday, Friday, Saturday I'm in my bed in pain, wrapped in my heated blanket because I've pushed it too far. And it's a kind of juggle to consistently plan and problem solve. Even something as simple as kind of going to the shop requires checking routes, pacing, what are the potential obstacles. If I go to Asda late at night, yeah, it's quieter with people, but there's more boxes and things to manoeuvre around because that's the time that they're stocking the shelves. And sometimes it's so bad that you can't even get up and down aisles without trying to find somebody and ask them to move. And if I'm going to the shop to avoid people, I don't really want to then be going finding people to move things. Like, it is something where there are still times, I think, in an able-bodied way. Like, the other day when I went and I got my nails done, I was going to message the girl saying like, oh, when I'm coming, do you want me to pick you up a coffee? I know there's another girl that works with her, so I was going to offer to like grab them one and grab me one too. But how the fuck am I carrying 3 cups of coffee whilst also pushing myself in my wheelchair? Like, it's then also not safe to place it. Oops, I've just bumped the microphone. It's not safe for me to place it on my lap and move about because hot liquid scald my leg if I tip it over. So it's things like that, usually really small things where I think, oh, I can just do that, and then it's like, no babe, you're disabled. Like, you actually need to think of a different way to do that now. And although my accident was 6 years ago this year and 3 years ago being an amputee, there are still things in everyday life that maybe it's just that I've not done that in such a long time. My thought process is that to do it as somebody who is not using a wheelchair or who still has 2 legs, and it really has to be an intentional thing of, no, I need to think in a disabled mindset. Like, and I think people hearing that, maybe that sounds like I'm putting myself down or like putting myself into a box or like labeling myself or making disability my personality or whatever, but like, this is my life. If I don't take into account disability and I do say go pick up those 3 coffees and then I burn myself, that's on me for burning myself, and then I'm probably able to do less because I'm in more pain because I've burnt myself by carrying hot drinks because I wasn't thinking about it in a way of disability. So yeah, I think that kind of, it's been a work in progress from the accident to kind of getting to here, because especially with the frame, I was housebound a lot, so I just kind of found ways to make things work, and now it's kind of still doing that, finding ways to make things work, but also realising that sometimes the way I think it is going to work out is not actually what it's going to look like. Another example is me thinking putting my leg on and doing the pressure of my tyres in my car would be like a quick exercise exercise task to do, and it then ended up taking me 50 minutes and I had to take a 4-hour nap after it because I was absolutely fucked. It got to the point my next door neighbour, who hardly ever comes out of his house now, actually came out when I got to the last tyre asking me if I needed a hand because I'd been circling around my car for ages, and I'm just like, no, I thought this was going to be 5 minutes and now it's been 45 minutes and I am fucking gubbed. So it's things like that, learning as I go, making adaptations, but also having to be consistent in that, because there's sometimes I'll do things and I'll think, fuck, I've already done that before and it didn't work out, but then I'm doing it again. And it can be one of those things that, like, it's frustrating because it's a bit like living on hard mode. You do things and then you're like, oh, fuck, I need to do that again. And then that's frustrating. I actually have a point in my notes about problem solving and challenges, but you know what? I think I've just kind of fucking ticked that off of that rant. A big thing for my amputation anniversaries is body image, comfort, what that feels like. For my first 2 ampuversaries, I did a boudoir shoot for myself, and I decided not to do it this year because I didn't really feel like it was necessary. Like, I kind of got what I needed from it the 2 years before, because having the frame really had an impact on my body image. I was always somebody already that didn't like how I looked. I wanted to hide away. I would hate being in the shower or the bath because I would have to look at my body. Like, just self-hate, not liking myself at all, and having the frame on really kind of amplified that. I just felt before the accident, I was also kind of in a phase of trying to make myself as small as possible and shrinking into the background, and that meant wearing a lot of black or muted colours. And now it really is a thing of like, I wear what's comfortable to me. Like, with the frame on, I lived in a night dress wearing oversized skirts that ended up ripped with holes in them from the frame, and amputation really did kind of flip something. Like, my scars tell my story. I finally feel gratitude towards my body for everything that it survived and endured. I started to experiment with clothes, stitching the skinny jeans because the frame felt like it was trapping, and never again will I wear a fucking pair of jeans that I feel like are death to wear, really. Like, I would never before of wearing like bodycon dresses and having it like stick to my body, because like growing up around slimming world and weight loss culture, having a belly was a negative thing, but like it fucking holds your organs and whatever. So like, my body got me through what it got me through, and I'll wear whatever I'm comfortable in, and that means crop tops or bodycon dresses or flowy skirts or like whatever the fuck I want, because it's what I'm comfortable in. Like, having my spokes on my orange chair all colourful, and I'm getting some purple rim covers today, which I'm so excited about, because then it's just like even more colour, even more personality. And when I'm out and about, it makes me really happy because people ask, oh, like, I get a lot of compliments on my spokes, but a lot of people are like, oh my god, where did you get them? My son's in a wheelchair, my niece is in a wheelchair, they would love something like that just so it's their personality. And it's the fact that they're so cheap off Amazon. I'm always like, Amazon, 5-6 quid, you can get so many packets. These did my wheelchair and my best pal's wheelchair, but they take a lot of effort to do. It took me like 4 hours the first time I did them, so prepare for that. But it's great because you can switch them out and you can change it up, and it does match their personality, and it is something that makes me really happy. Like, even talking about it, I'm so animated because I'm like, ee. But that's like comfort for me, wearing things that are comfortable, having mobility aids that match my personality, and having a home that feels safe. Like, home to me is safety, it's Simba, it's creating a space that feels like it is fully mine. It's the sanctuary that I wanted when I was always growing up, and I'm really, really fucking proud of how it is all coming together, because comfort is freedom, whether it is me with a messy bun wearing joggies or bold Becca with a rainbow eyebrows and wild makeup. It is painting on the walls where the brain feels a little bit messy, but it is a better thing than tanning a bottle of alcohol or self-harming physically. It is reshaping my environment and finding a really healthy outlet for emotions. Comfort for me is being able to be unapologetically myself. I've started noticing how much I value sensory and emotional consistency at home. Lighting, textures, sounds, even smells all contribute to a sense of stability that I didn't really realise I needed until I had to totally rebuild my environment around accessibility and my own comfort. What have I learned about resilience and adaptation through being an amputee? Resilience is not just a one-time thing, it is a constant practice. Prosthetics have problems, they might break, wheelchairs get stuck, energy dips, pain flares up. Each situation demands a different and new response. Sometimes adaptation works and sometimes it doesn't, and that means acceptance then has to follow. I've realised that things that I can do now may not be possible in a year or 5 years, and that's okay. Some weeks I feel absolutely fucking unstoppable. I'm smashing through my to-do list, and then there are other weeks where I am just flat out struggling with fatigue and only really managing the basics. Before my accident, I really thought that struggling made me weak. I hid the mess. I feared that people wouldn't see me as somebody being put together, even though I know I really wasn't. But I'm a lot better now at admitting when I'm struggling. I know my strength because I have survived things that I can barely even comprehend in hindsight that happened. The resilience is what carries me forward. It is proof that I can build a future that looks different from what I imagined, but still extremely meaningful to me. I've also come to appreciate the emotional side. Resilience is less about pushing past pain and more about recognising what my limits are, setting boundaries, and forgiving myself for needing space. It is not a linear process in any sense, and that is something that I feel like I'm becoming a lot more comfortable with, because it not being linear was something that I used to kind of tear myself down for. Why am I not further forward? Why am I not able to do this? Why can't I do what they can do? And it is just a case of, it is my journey and I will figure it out in my own time. But even if I don't figure it out, that's okay too. Like, there is so much space for things in my life. How have my priorities and values shifted? So I think I mentioned this in the last episode, my kind of life update, that life before the accident was overwhelmingly nursing focused. It was my passion, my purpose, the reason that I get out of bed every morning, and recovery changed that for me. Finding my voice and realising that I could speak bluntly without fear made me see that returning to healthcare as a career would likely push me to breaking point. So my priorities shifted from surviving in a demanding profession to surviving as a person, living authentically, and being able to manage my own well-being before thinking about managing other people's well-being. Survival mode had taught me habits that I then had to take accountability for and figure it out. I accrued a lot of debt, and a big part of the new phase of life that I'm in is, like I just said, correcting those choices, paying off what I owe, establishing financial stability, and being very deliberate about my self-care. Boundaries for me have become a non-negotiable. I am committed to better communication, being very transparent about expectations in relationship, and prioritising people who match my energy instead of draining it. It has been really empowering for me to be able to separate obligation from choice and notice the difference of weight and my mental load. Investing in myself has really become a priority. After my adult disability payment redetermination and some back pay, I am actually, along with my anti-slip rim protectors, I have for the past 2.5 years wanted a Garmin watch because it is able to record pushes in wheelchairs, and when I go out and I do a loop in my chair or I wear my prosthetic, I use Strava on my phone, which doesn't necessarily measure any of the other things, just the distance. And because it's on my phone, I am terrible for forgetting to stop it when I get back into the car, and then it adds an extra fucking 10-15 kilometres because I've drove home, and then I need to stop it, and then I need to cut it down, and then it's telling me, oh, you've reached a personal best for your first ever 10k, and I'm like, I didn't actually do 10k, I was driving in my car. So I'm getting my Garmin watch today, and I am so excited because it gives me more of an idea, like what I was kind of saying about energy pacing and thinking about it like money or the spoon theory. If I put X amount of spoons towards having a shower in the morning and recording a podcast episode, how many spoons do I have left for the rest of the day? And on top of my Garmin watch, I was also going to get a visible wristband, but I've realised that Garmin has a lot of things that will give me tangible data to be able to see how my body works without paying for a subscription and a visible wristband. Fuck's sake, I keep thinking that because I think for the wristband and a yearly subscription it is about 200 quid, which is the same as the Garmin. So I'm going to see how it goes if it is a case where I do need something additional like the visible for tracking my energy and kind of doing too much and trying to understand when I'm getting to burnout point, I think is what is important for me with this. And it is I'm just trying to learn more basically, so that is really kind of a priority, to have more of an understanding of my body and my capacity and where my limitations are and not pushing myself to absolute burnout. I also got a pressure relief cushion for my wheelchair, but I've been recording for nearly an hour and my arse is really hurting. Let's see how much of this I've got left. Still quite a bit. Jesus. Let's move on. What has changed for me in the past year? So I kind of gave a bit of a rundown earlier about year 1, year 2, year 3. So this is just kind of from year 2 to year 3, what I feel like has changed in that time. So progress feels like it has felt a bit slower in ways. Every step has been significant and kind of helped me to understand more, but the major milestones were kind of receiving my new wheelchair, which I got in the September of last year, and getting my new prosthetic at the start of this year. Each of these brought not only improvements but also unexpected challenges that kind of made me rethink routines, adapt my strategies and navigate the world a bit differently. This past year I feel like has truly been about understanding what is possible for me, experimenting with different paths and establishing a clearer sense of autonomy and independence. Even on days where the progress felt less substantial, each small victory still really contributes to this growing sense of capability and resilience. I think independence has been a major focus, whilst support has been available. I've realised that expecting it from everyone around me isn't always realistic, and some people just simply were not capable of meeting me where I was at, like I'd kind of mentioned previously earlier on. Accepting that reality has been both empowering and draining, kind of pushing me to recognise my own resourcefulness and resilience. And I've had to figure out of ways to manage with the support that I do have. I'm making kind of deliberate choices about which tasks to prioritise, how to plan my days, and how to kind of pace myself and avoid burnout, like I've been talking about. This process has been full of trial and error, but it has helped me to become more adaptable, self-aware and intentional in how I approach challenges. Emotionally, I feel like I have matured in ways that I couldn't really have anticipated. In the past, I would have suppressed difficult feelings hoping that they would fade, which only amplified this internal self-blame, self-shame dialogue, which now I tend to allow myself to experience my feelings fully, communicate them openly, and revisit complex topics over time rather than trying to shut them down, because I've learned that processing is ongoing. It is normal for thoughts to resurface, and revisiting them helps me to untangle the emotions without letting them fester. I feel like this approach has given me more mental space for problem solving, self-care, and just growing emotionally, because it is allowing me to navigate life with a lot more patience and compassion for myself, and without this expectation to be perfect. My relationships, I feel like, have also evolved. I have invested effort into repairing connections and trying to build stronger bonds with people. However, I did have to accept that some people may be unwilling or unable to engage in accountability or consider another person's perspective. Going through the recognition of that was painful, to be honest, but it reinforced that my expectations in relationships are valid, especially when they are communicated openly, and I deserve relationships that are built on mutual respect and empathy. Letting go of relationships that drain or distort my sense of self has really been an act of respect for myself. I've learned that not everyone will share the same values or capacity for growth, and that is totally okay, because it does not diminish my right to maintain my boundaries and protect my well-being. The last little question that I asked myself, which you might be glad to hear because I have been yapping: what kind of feelings was I sitting with overall? Finding a balance between gratitude and sadness is always been something that is essential for me. I am deeply thankful to be alive and to be able to build a life that does bring me joy and meaning, but I do also carry a lot of anger and sadness about the circumstances that I've faced, the pain, the losses, and the very fucking complex and traumatizing recovery process. Some days are really hard, and I grieve relationships that weren't able to be sustained, opportunities that shifted due to the accident, or just the constant hurdles of accessibility in daily life. By giving space to these feelings, I've learned that grief and gratitude can really coexist, and embracing both of them really helps me to kind of admire the periods of joy and pride and being fulfilled. Grief kind of shows up now in more nuanced ways. Initially, it was overwhelming, tied to the permanent state of disability and the loss of dreams like recovering to nursing or being able to start a new life in New Zealand. It now kind of shows up in more subtle forms, like frustration over inaccessible places, unanticipated limitations, or the realisation that people just aren't capable of providing the support that I thought was there and that I needed. Treating myself with kindness during these moments has become vital. Like, I can't even explain. I have had to view grief when it comes to disability and the accident as an ongoing process, a natural part of adapting to life circumstances and unpredictabilities, rather than it being a sign of failure, and reminding me that growth and change are something that continuously keep going on. There are multiple moments where I have been able to feel proud of the progress that I've made by just completing daily tasks, maintaining routines, keeping my home in order, coping with fatigue that kind of all represents any kind of tangible achievements. And to outsiders, these may seem like minor things, but for me, they are milestones and kind of reflecting the resilience, consistency, and personal growth that I've managed to kind of achieve throughout this time. And anniversaries and life markers kind of amplify this feeling of pride, being able to reinforce how far that I've come and the strength that I've managed to kind of cultivate during that time. I feel like authentic gratitude for me goes beyond trying to put a positive spin on everything. It manifests in the quiet satisfaction of a day lived fully, the comfort and presence of Simba, and the joy of being around people that love me and I love them too. It is the recognition of survival, valuing the second chance that I have been given, and appreciating the both small wins and significant accomplishments. Genuine gratitude does not ignore hardship, it exists alongside it. I have marking each joyful moment as kind of profound and deeply felt by being able to, pardon me, and I sit down and kind of talk and yap and share these stories because I want people to understand what life can be like living with a disability, the good moments, the tough moments, the everything in between that are just little rants and tangents that I might go off on. When I first started talking about my mental health, probably over 10 years ago at this point, it was about breaking the stigma and starting real conversations. And this podcast for me started about a way to talk about a Lazaroff's and amputation and things that people maybe didn't share openly, or they weren't kind of seen a lot because it's a rare thing to happen to people, I guess. And over time, it has started to become a massive part of my healing, because there are some episodes that I've sat down and hit record and it has been so difficult for me, where I've cried and shared feelings that at times made me want to be fucking sick. But it's one of those things where if somebody is listening to this and feels less alone, then it's worth it. Like, that's the thing for me. Like, if people listen to it and they take something from it, then I'm happy. I am really grateful for the tools that let me to share these stories. Having a camera phone and a microphone set up, it kind of allows me to think and process and find a way to communicate more clearly, gives me a way to organise my thoughts and my feelings and make situations feel a lot less overwhelming to me. Talking through these experiences helps me to make sense of my own life whilst also kind of connecting with others who might understand or learn something from my journey. Yeah, thank you to those who listen along, who interact, who like the videos. I recently just hit 85 subscribers, which might seem really small, but to me, like, it's growth, it is connection, it is proof that what I'm doing matters, because I think this year when I started, I was at like 40, maybe just below 50 subscribers. So that's like nearly double in being consistent, and yeah, that is exciting to me, because living with disability changes every part of my life, how I move, my routines, what matters to me, my relationships, how I see myself, and sharing kind of these things helps me to get a sense of my experiences and also give a window into what my life with a disability actually looks like. It's not pretending that everything is perfect or positive. It is about honesty and understanding in human experiences. And yeah, if you have enjoyed this episode, listen to me rambling on, like I said earlier. If you have any recovery things, anniversaries that stick in your mind, I would love to hear about them, either below in the comments, or you can send me an email to cripplecchroniclespod@gmail.com. I am hopefully going to be getting on to the kind of video essay about euthanasia and the ethics around that. There may be another episode in between that, because with all of the work I've still got to do for that, I feel like it's probably 4 weeks off at this point, and I'll need to record something in there for consistency. So yeah, I don't know, the next episode will be in 2 weeks' time. Who knows what it will be about? It might be about euthanasia, or it could be something completely different, because never know with Becca, sometimes I sit down and I think, I don't really want to record anything that I've planned, let's just start yapping. So yes, have a lovely week. Look after yourselves. Like, subscribe, do all the supportive things, and I will catch you next time. See you later. Bye!